You ever hear about the Alien sequel that almost brought Ripley and Hicks literally back from the dead? And no, this was not some fan script floating around Reddit. This was a real project, greenlit by Fox, that could potentially wipe Alien 3 and Resurrection off the map, and was helmed by none other than Neil Blomkamp, the dude behind District 9. Yeah, that guy. I so vividly remember, back in 2015, Blomkamp had the idea for an Alien film, and he dropped a few pieces of concept art on Instagram. Obviously, the internet went nuts. It felt like we were getting the Alien comeback fans had been begging for. Fox saw the hype and gave it a thumbs up. For a hot minute, Alien 5 looked like it was actually happening, but then, out of nowhere, the whole thing fizzled. So what exactly happened? Why did a sequel that fans clearly wanted disappear? And what was this version of Alien 5 even about? In this marvelous video, let's dig into the lost Alien sequel we never got, and why it still stings years later. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The fan art that almost brought Ripley back. Back in 2015, Neil Blomkamp, fresh off the last leg of Chappie, was stretching out ideas on the side, all because he had this random creative itch. It was an idea that no one asked for, but everyone would end up wanting. While messing around between takes and edits, he started dreaming up his own version of an Alien movie. It was just a passion project, because he was hooked on aliens, and had a what-if story gnawing at the back of his head. He didn't wait for a studio or ask for permission, and started designing concept art. One fine day, he posted the concept art on Instagram, and it blew up. Fans couldn't believe what they were seeing. Hicks wounded but alive, Ripley older in a biomechanical suit, but still ready to take on the Xenos. That was all it took, and this version wasn't tied to Prometheus or any of the other mess that came after Aliens. It was its own beast. The post lights up across the internet. Reddit, fan forums, comment sections, everybody's talking about it, and Fox took notice. Instead of brushing him off, they actually called him in. Next thing you know, Blomkamp is sitting across the table from studio execs, pitching Alien 5 for real. Fox was into it. They liked what they saw. The 2012 Prometheus had its fans, but it wasn't exactly winning over the old school crowd. Suddenly, Fox was legit considering Blomkamp's side project. Even Sigourney Weaver, who was working with Blomkamp on Chappie, backed the whole thing and was ready to suit up again as Ripley. The idea was bold. Blomkamp's pitch was raw, personal, and way closer in spirit to Aliens. It felt like a real continuation, not a reboot or a rehash. Basically, a direct sequel to the 1986 Aliens, a film that made people fall in love with Ripley in the first place. The story would have jumped 30 years ahead of Aliens, taking place in an alternate timeline where the 3 survivors made it out alive after the LV-426 nightmare. It was going to be a do-over, like if Alien 3 and Resurrection never happened. And for a brief window, it looked like this movie was actually happening. Fans were hyped, counting days. Alien 5 was heading for liftoff, but suddenly everything came crashing down. So what went wrong? That's where the heartbreak sets in. Ridley Scott came knocking, and that's when the trouble started. Back from the dead, Ripley and Hicks were set to return. Once Neil Blomkamp's Alien 5, called Alien Xeno initially, got real attention, fans didn't have to guess much about what it would look like. The concept art and the stuff he teased were straight up insane. Right away, people saw Ripley, but not as we had seen her before. She looked half human, half biomech, her skull partially fused with alien tech, like she had either been experimented on or had merged with something way beyond her control. It wasn't the clone Ripley from Resurrection either. This was the OG Ripley, the one who had been dragged through hell and now fused with the very thing she'd been trying to destroy for decades, although still standing and still pissed. Next up, we see Hicks, alive, which, let's be honest, was already a win. But you could tell the dude had been through it. His face was wrecked. The art showed him with acid burns all down one side, probably from that acid splashback in Aliens. But he looked ready to go, rifle in hand, armor on. Blomkamp was bringing the characters back with all the weight of what they had been through, without undoing the stuff fans really cared about. He didn't want to reinvent these characters. All he really wanted to do was honor who these characters were, not what the later movies turned them into. Hicks wasn't some forgotten side character. He mattered, and so did Newt, who would have returned as an adult. Traumatized, yes, but not erased. The background and the concept art spoke volumes without needing words. Abandoned colonial stations, sunken alien ships, alien containment labs, and a whole lot of Weyland-Yutani tech. One image had a xenomorph literally pinned open on a wall, like a dissection project. Another showed strange hybrids in test chambers. It was clear that the company hadn't stopped playing God. Over and over again, they had tinkered with things they had no business touching in their pursuit to weaponize the Xenos. and Ripley had finally had enough. The rumored story would have sent Ripley back to where it all started, either LV-426 or a place just like it. Her mission wasn't survival, but to clean house. She might have burned it all down. No more queens, no more eggs, no more company. It was a last stand, not for humanity, but for her. Ripley passing the torch to Newt was hinted at, setting her up as the next face of the franchise. However, we can't say for sure because the plot was never officially confirmed, and the sequel never saw the light of day. And this bothers me. All we know is Blumkamp's tone wasn't going to be an all-out guns blazing like Aliens, or slow creeping dread like Alien. It wanted to live somewhere in between. Sharp, intense, personal, right in the middle. Like Ripley was fighting a war she had already lost once, but couldn't walk away from. And Sigourney Weaver was fully in. In interviews, she made it clear that this film felt like a proper send-off. Just Ripley versus the thing that stole her life. This could have been Ripley's curtain call, if done right. If even half of what was in that concept art made it to the screen, it would have been exceptionally awesome. Too bad it never happened. When Prometheus hijacked the franchise's future. While fans were hyped for Alien 5, Ridley Scott wasn't exactly clapping from the sidelines. He wasn't thrilled. At all. Scott, who directed the original Alien in 1979, had made himself the big boss of the franchise again. After being away from the franchise for decades, Scott had jumped back in with Prometheus in 2012, and was steering the ship for now, building his own prequel universe. He had big plans. Engineers, ancient alien creators, rogue androids, and whatever the black goo was turning into. It was weird, it was ambitious, but it was his. And he wasn't about to let anyone else jump the queue. So when Blomkamp decided his Alien 5 would chuck Alien 3, Resurrection, and all the Prometheus stuff in the bin, Scott stepped in. Quietly. Behind the scenes, word is he didn't love the idea of a new sequel messing with the timeline he was piecing together. Blomkamp's film was set to bring back Hicks and Newt. Scott was busy explaining how the xenomorphs were designed in a lab. That was never going to play well side by side. So, two different directions under the same franchise banner? From Scott's angle, it would confuse the audience and kill the momentum for his own story arc. Yeah, not gonna happen. Now Fox was stuck in the middle. On one hand, they had Ridley Scott, the one who made the original, carried clout, and was already shooting Alien Covenant, a sequel to Prometheus. His idea was to bridge the gap between Prometheus and the original Alien. On the other hand, Neil Blomkamp had the fanbase eating out of his hand. But like always in Hollywood, power talks. Scott had more of it. Fox backed off from Alien 5 without a peep. Prometheus and its sequels took priority. Blomkamp's version for Alien 5 was shelved. Officially, it was on hold, but everyone knew what that really meant. Alien 5 faded out while everyone was pretending Covenant was enough. The whole thing turned into a mess of studio politics. Blomkamp didn't trash talk anyone. He kept it professional, but fans could read between the lines. The legend had blocked the rookie. What felt like a sure thing in 2015 vanished by 2016. Covenant was released the next year, and the response was, well, meh. It ended up in the same boat as Chappie, ambitious but underwhelming in returns. Visually neat, heavy on philosophy, but it didn't bring in the love Aliens had earned decades ago. That pretty much killed Scott's hopes for a prequel on the spot. Meanwhile, Alien 5 sat in limbo somewhere, waiting for its turn. But all we were left with were half-baked prequel series and the ghost of a film that could have brought the core cast back for one final ride. But thanks to studio politics and Scott's grip on the franchise, that ride never left the garage, and it still bugs the hell out of me to this day. Lost in Space, Why Alien 5 Was Left Behind. After the hype and heartbreak of Blomkamp's Alien 5 being quietly shoved aside for Covenant, fans held on to hope. Maybe once Ridley Scott wrapped up his prequel story, the sequel would come back around. Maybe Fox would let Blomkamp finish what he started. But the longer it stayed silent, the clearer it became. The project stayed in that weird space for a while, technically alive, but going nowhere. Blomkamp didn't officially say it was dead right away. He stayed diplomatic. However, nothing was moving behind the scenes. The studio had moved on. And then in 2019, Disney swooped in, bought out Fox, and that was it. That was the final nail. If there was any tiny spark left, it got snuffed out with the deal. Disney had its own plans, its own strategy, and a risky, R-rated Alien sequel that rewrote the timeline definitely didn't make the cut. By 2020, Blomkamp made it official. He finally confirmed what everyone had figured out. Alien 5 was done. It was dead. And around the same time, Sigourney Weaver admitted she was at peace with it too. She had always said she would only come back for the right story, and without Blomkamp's vision, there wasn't anything left on the table that pulled her in. So Ripley never suited up again. Hicks never got his second chance. Newt never grew into the warrior fans hoped she would become. That alternate future where the alien family gets a proper ending? Yes, we were robbed of it. And this part, that hurts. This wasn't about a bad idea. It wasn't about the audience not caring. Fans were loud. But this wasn't the first time a passionate director with a bold idea got sidelined by studio politics. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Too many clashing directions. We've seen it with Guillermo del Toro's At the Mountains of Madness, George Miller's Justice League Mortal, and even Jodorowsky's Dune. Alien 5 had potential. Blumkamp had the vision, but Hollywood didn't want to gamble. Now Alien 5 lives on as the sequel that almost was. A bunch of concept art, a few interviews, and a wave of what-ifs. A movie that could have closed Ripley's story the right way, if only a boardroom full of execs hadn't gotten cold feet. Classic Hollywood, you see. But things are now heating up again. Disney's finally making moves. First up, the 2024 Alien Romulus, a brand new film that takes place between the 1979 Alien and the 1986 Aliens. A fresh story, new characters, but still in the gritty, claustrophobic world we know. And over on FX, Noah Hawley's got a prequel series called Alien Earth, set in the year 2120, which recently dropped its trailer. This one brings the Alien franchise to Earth. It's a prequel and explores the backstory of the franchise's universe, how it all started before the space freighter Nostromo ever picked up that distress signal. So yeah, the past decade has been bumpy for Alien. It looks like the xenomorph isn't done yet. Marvelous verdict. This thought has been living rent-free in my head for years. Alien 5 wasn't some random sequel idea. It felt like the sequel, the one that would have finally given Ripley, Hicks, and Newt the ending they deserved. But of course, Hollywood did what Hollywood does. Rob us of nice sequels, and that sucks, because it felt personal. This had heart, legacy, and a shot at redemption for characters we actually cared about. Could it have saved the franchise? Maybe, maybe not. But it definitely would have been more fan-focused, and let's be real, it had way more buzz than Covenant ever did. Will Alien 5 in all its glory ever come back? I doubt it. Maybe it was too good to be true. Or maybe, like the xenomorphs, it was locked away before it could grow into something dangerous. Either way, Alien 5 is the best movie we never got. But hey, if there's one thing the Alien series taught us, it's that you can't kill a good idea that easily. Who knows? Maybe one day someone will pick it up. Until then, Alien 5 stays stuck between something that could have been legendary and a lost cause. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.